Hi, my name is Patti Mohr. I'm a journalist, and I'm here with Professor Bill Slomanson, and he is a professor at 3 schools in the state of California, professor of law. I came across him because he recently penned a couple of articles about a very interesting civil case that's going on right now. And it is this government of Mexico has sued the U.S. gun manufacturers for damages. Now, Professor Slomanson, what first drew your interest to this case?
I'm because I'm into international matters, and so it's actually at the intersection of civil procedure and international law. There's a lot of civil litigation and a lot of civil litigation fine points that have been debated during the life of this case, which has now had maybe 157 filings. And of course, with the gun trafficking problem that Mexico complains about in its complaint, it has an international aspect to it as well. So I was naturally drawn to it. Because I've done quite a lot of op-eds and a lot of writing in the area of gun control.
Okay, let's go back and do a little bit of background, because I'm guessing a lot of people are maybe not even aware that this case is going on. Last August, the government of Mexico hired attorneys and sued U.S. gun manufacturers, and I think you said 11 different companies are the defendants in this case, and they filed this case in Massachusetts. Let's talk about who the defendants are and what their response has been so far. And first of all, who are the defendants in this case?
Yeah, so you had a number of defendants, as you pointed out, gun and ammunition manufacturers. Primarily, it was filed in the Northeast because that's where Smith & Wesson, one of the primary defendants, has its business. And an international marketer is also in Massachusetts as well. So that was the reason for the venue being in Boston. So basically, Remington, Ruger, Smith & Wesson, all the major gun manufacturers are defendants in this case.
I noticed that the case is so interesting. Just it gives you a lot of information about not only, it's much more than guns. It gives you a lot of information about what's happening in Mexico and this trade. Now, why does the government of Mexico and its attorneys, why do they use the term trafficked? Why are they saying these guns are trafficked into Mexico?
Several reasons. One is that we have a significant gun culture divide between the United States and Mexico. In the US, you have 120 guns for every 100 people in the country, somewhere around 400 million plus guns. Whereas in Mexico, private ownership of guns is prohibited. So somehow over up to 500,000 guns per year, per the latest estimate, are trafficked across the border from the United States into Mexico. So that's what we mean. It's comparable to the sex trafficking concept. This is the gun trafficking concept, which basically is an iron river, as it's referred to, of guns that are flowing from the United States into Mexico.
And what's happening to the guns after they cross the U.S.-Mexico border into Mexico? Who's receiving them? Who's buying them?
The cartels. They are outgunning a lot of the Mexican police and the Mexican authorities. So they have these assault rifles, 50 caliber rifles, which government agencies warned Congress about in the early 2000s about being so dangerous that they were, it was ironic that the 50 caliber, for example, according to one study by a government agency, was easier to obtain than a handgun. So cartels basically are using them, and that's why they've been able to be so successful in their fights and gunfights, very ugly and violent gunfights throughout Mexico against the Mexican authorities.
So strengthening the Mexican cartels and
And plus, you have illegal sales in the United States as well. You have about 50,000 gun dealers in the United States, and there are almost 10,000 gun dealers just in the 4 states that border on Mexico. And a number of that proliferation came in the last 20 years after Congress allowed the federal gun assault weapons ban to expire.
okay, since you brought that up, let's talk about that. I know in one of your articles, and I'll include the links to your articles in in the comments section. One of your articles was written for the American Society of International Law, and in that article, you talked about the background of U.S. law, 2004 and 2005 specifically. Can you tell me what happened in those years?
Well, the point of entry is actually 1994 in terms of my thinking of the problem.
Okay.
And that's the year that Congress passed the federal assault weapons ban. That was allowed to expire, as I think you mentioned, with the year 2000. That expired in 2004. And notwithstanding early 2000 warnings by Department of Justice, by Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and by a DHS-funded study, Congress just didn't listen to the dangers and concerns about gun proliferation and trafficking, both to Mexico and other countries. Congress didn't listen and made its decision to pass the 2005 Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And since then, we have the great proliferation of assault weapons that have resulted in things like Uvalde just 2 weeks ago, with the types of weaponry that a lot of those 3rd and 4th graders were not recognizable, as we've learned from the news reports, because of the savagery of the weapons involved.
Now I'm going to pause on that moment, just a moment, because that's 2004. That's when I was covering Congress, and I remember that time. Now, it was not the issue I was covering at the time. I was covering education, but I remember being in the press briefings, and the other reporters were asking at the time. Tom DeLay was the House Majority Leader, and they were asking him, when are you going to bring this up on the floor? Because that's when it was expiring, and he just said that we don't have the votes for it. So what I noticed in your article for the American Society of International Law was the part about the immunity. So not only did Congress let that assault weapons ban expire, the next year they came back and they granted as a gift to the gun manufacturers. Basically, they said, hey, we're going to make you guys immune if anybody misuses these weapons and people are hurt, it's not your fault. So was that a significant change in the law?
Significant would be a huge understatement. It was a giant change in the law, because effectively what happened is all of a sudden there's no more federal assault weapons ban. And in the last 20 years since that occurred, you've had this tremendous proliferation of AR-15s and 50 caliber rifles, other types of assault weapons, which have wreaked the havoc that they have during that time and have resulted in it's hard. It's really heartbreaking to think of all of the children and adults, both in the United States and in Mexico, all the homicides that have occurred as a result of the illegal use by 3rd parties, not the gun manufacturers or the ammo manufacturers, but the illegal use by 3rd-party dealers that are straw purchases in the United States, resulting in sales to cartels and other illegal recipients in Mexico and in other countries. But the biggest problem, of course, is our neighbor to the south, who's had the most significant problem. And that's basically why they brought the case, Estados Unidos Mexicanos versus Smith & Wesson and the other various defendants. because of the frustration, because of the failure of diplomacy to resolve this issue between the two countries. Basically, there have been a number of suits that have been filed, but this is the first time that a government has filed, and that's the government of Mexico that filed in August of 2021. And we should have a result from the trial court in this case any day now. It's been a couple of months since the trial judge had the hearing, and often you have a decision at the time of the hearing. But because of the significance of this particular issue, the judge has, in the interim, received a number of additional filings, but also there's a very significant matter and some difficult issues of state and federal constitutional law. So I think it could be decided any day. A number of us have been waiting to get the result. I check every day on the government website to see whether it's been decided yet, but the judge is obviously doing, taking his time, due diligence, et cetera, et cetera. And I suspect it will be a rather lengthy opinion. And basically what has got to be overcome is the federal immunity under the law that I referred to from 2005. And also a problem of what we call in the law proximate cause, which is that the defendants are arguing that the gun manufacturers and ammo manufacturers are not responsible for what third-party criminals do with their guns after they leave, after they're sold off to retail.